Hey, if you've been around Putnam County at all in the last couple months, there is a name you will definitely know. Our next guest was an amazing columnist, and now she's an amazing author who has written a wonderful book. Tonight, she's going to be here to share it with us. My name is Vin Dacquino, and our next guest is Dorothy Killackey. Dorothy, welcome. A pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Vin.
It wasn't easy to get you here, you know, but it is our pleasure. Tell us, who is Dorothy Killackey?
Well, I have to say my age from the beginning because I think that's what's the amazing thing. I'm 85.
God bless you.
And I am absolutely amazed that my book is enjoyed, appreciated, and liked by people.
Well, I hear people all over town talking about it. These are wonderful musings, and you've just written a wonderful book. Now,
Thank
I
you.
understand the book is not really your first attempt at writing. Writing goes back with you a little bit. Is that true?
Well, this is actually the first book, but I have done publications. My first publication, I guess you would say, excuse me, my first publication was Secrets of Learning that I did for Grolier.
Wow.
Grolier publishers of encyclopedias back in the 70s, and I did a newsletter for them that went along with their encyclopedias, and there were 4 editions, and they gave parents various ideas of helping the children at school, and I was an active teacher at the time. But that was quite exciting that Grolier bought up these, so that was my first. And then I began doing different newsletters and things of that sort. But this is the first time that I've actually seen anything put together in a book. And it's
now,
very exciting.
you were a teacher.
I was a teacher for 25 years, but I didn't teach until, well, I taught for a couple of years when I was first married, and you'll see some of those stories about that in the book. But then my real active teaching started when my children were all in school. I felt very strongly about being at home with them in their early years, that I wanted to work with them and see that they were doing things correctly. But once they were in school, then I felt that then I could pursue the teaching that I always wanted to do.
I hear you. I taught for 35 years.
Did you really?
Yes, I was an English teacher. I taught 6th grade most of my career, but I was a wrestling coach and a drama coach, and I just loved teaching.
I love teaching too, and if I were to do it all over again, I'd go back to teaching.
Me too.
I love hearing from my students, but some of my stories, when I do my stories, some of my children, of course I changed the names. I would never use the regular names. Some of my stories are about my children that I taught, and I figured one time there were over 700 because I taught summer school for 10 years as well as 25 years of all the different grades, all the elementary grades, I should say. So that was, and you asked when I got into writing. I think I got into writing when I was doing like different newsletters for the teachers and publicizing, after I retired, some of the volunteer work I did. I helped to publicize some of those things.
And then you got into writing a column. Tell me about that.
That was kind of, I call it providential, because this has been marvelous for me. What a wonderful thing for an ego of someone my age. I was writing these articles publicizing various volunteer things I did, and one day Marty, the editor of the Putnam Times Press, she got in touch with me and she said, "Wouldn't you like to write a column?" And that, I never thought of writing something about me. It was always about these activities I was doing. And I said, well, "What would I write about? You mean what I think about? What I muse?" That's what we'll call it, she said, Musings.
Wow. So
And
the column was called Musings
she called
before
it
the
that.
book was. Oh, okay.
So that's what they were. And every other week since May of 2010, I've been having these various columns. And again, that was another very strange thing when I got them published. Because what happened was and Vinny, I'm talking too much.
No, you're not. You could never talk too much. I could listen to you all day, Dorothy.
Thank you. Well, it was really accidental that I published it, because while people said, gee, they would be great put together for a book, the thought of putting them together and everything was just too much for me to think about. But one day, excuse me again, I was talking a lot. This morning I was at a book signing.
Oh, wow.
And it gets your voice. I went to the North Salem Library, as a matter of fact, and I was thinking I was in on a conference, and it was the wrong day. I said, but look, the newspaper, it said, she said, it was a misprint. Well, that misprint was my opportunity, because the librarian was a real sweetheart. She said, well, let me at least take a couple of your columns, and she showed them to an Amazon publisher.
Wow.
The Amazon publisher came to me and said, do you have any more? And I said, I've got 54 of them.
Wow.
So
And that's where it came.
That's where it came. She
Wonderful.
said, well, we're going to publish them.
Well, now, so this isn't all from the column. This book is kind of broken up into like 3 different categories.
Yes, my stories, since Marty, my editor, gave me total freedom to write anything I wanted, at times I would say to her, well, is this appropriate? She said, whatever you think, whatever you muse about, that's what it's about. So my columns are about cultural comments sometimes. I'm a little bit caustic.
Okay.
With some of them.
I'm going to want to talk about that a little bit.
Some of them are what I call whimsical memories, because when you think back over the past, you know, sometimes, and then the third is about personalities, people that I knew, children that I knew. Again, I always change the names.
Right.
But people that impressed me or encouraged me, or that I felt really I wanted to write about their stories. So
Okay,
the 3 things.
Let's approach all 3 of those categories, and let's begin with the first.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's something you feel strongly about.
Well, sometimes I get a little annoyed with what's going on in the culture. And like one of my stories, Let It All Hang Out.
Okay.
And that's one of my stories about the culture, because in the old days, we're talking, I'm 85 after all, and in the old days, we used to dress, when we go on a plane trip, we'd wear a hat, and we'd have a purse and gloves and everything, and we all dressed perfectly as well as we could, traveling.
Casual meant loosening your tie.
Casual. Now today, anything goes. If we went to school, we were all nicely dressed. We were expected to be nicely dressed to school. But today, it all hangs out.
Oh, yes, it does.
And it really does. But you know, I got to thinking, Ben, as I was writing that, while it all hangs out, I don't want to criticize that necessarily, because now you know what people are.
Right.
If a person is sloppy, well, that's what they are. If a person is all uptight, you can tell by their demeanor and their clothing. If a person is a cougar, like
oh yeah, and there's a few cougars around.
you can tell just by their demeanor and what they wear. So letting it all hang out maybe isn't too bad.
Yeah, and you're right. There's 2 sides to it. There was a time when people didn't let it all hang out, which sometimes meant they couldn't be themselves, and sometimes that was a problem. Today, maybe we don't want to see as much of themselves as we do, but you're right, and we've come a long way, and that's one of the advantages of being a little older and having seen a changing world. a very changing world.
And you know, as you get older, you really have to accept. It's, I get annoyed with some of my cronies and my buddies. They don't want to accept what's happening because it's not all bad. No. It's like letting it hang out. We know what people are. Mm-hmm. And people, you know, it's funny with these stories, the more I write about myself, well, one of my friends said to me, when I wrote the story about my first date, for example, she said to me, "But Dorothy, you're telling everything about yourself." And I said, "That's what it's about." Yeah. And you know, the more I tell about myself, the more people come and tell me about themselves. Yeah. And strangers are coming up and hugging me because when I wrote the story about the magic of touch. Yeah. It's really amazing because things that I was keeping inside for all those years, they're now here and people are coming to me.
I do a program with Musings where we have high school students from the entire area. About 300-400 students come and they listen to authors speak. The topic of my workshop was co-ed naked writing. Mm-hmm. And what I said was that writing is an opportunity to bare your soul. That sometimes you have to go inside to be able to come outside. And having gone inside gives your reader an opportunity to see life in a different way. Your musings are exactly that. Musings about a wonderful life. And there's some things that you needed to say that you've said, and you've said well.
Well, thank you, Vin. I try to write well. It is such a pleasure. It really is. It's funny. You talk about. Well, I'm thinking about what comes up in my mind and why does a new musing come? And it's like right now, I'm putting up my little Christmas tree, and my little Christmas tree I've had for 45 years.
Wow.
And that little Christmas tree was given to me by a parent. And it was an interesting thing because her son was incorrigible, absolutely incorrigible, until he came to my class. Ah. And because of him, a lot of things changed in the way I was teaching because I saw, as a lot of teachers must learn, that you can't teach every child the same. This boy was so intelligent, so bright, second grade, but he was fourth grade level, that no wonder he was a troublemaker. Yeah. When I was scared to death when I learned I was going to have this Skippy in my class. But when he was put in the right mode, when I got him doing what he had to do, he blossomed. And the mother gave me this little Christmas tree for the class. Wow. Those are the days when we were able to have a Christmas tree in school. And the kids had such fun making decorations and stuff. But after I quit teaching, and of course trees aren't allowed in the classroom anymore, right. I still put it in my window.
There you go.
And it's
if
just
that
beautiful.
Tree could talk, Dorothy.
If that tree could talk, you're right.
Now, I'm going to ask you something. I'm very careful about what I'm about to ask you because I got burned once. Uh-oh. I asked a writer friend of mine, I said, her name is Roberta Silman, wonderful writer. And I said, Roberta, what's your favorite book? And she said, Vinny, what kind of question is that? How can you ask me that? That's like asking a mother which of her children is her favorite child. Yeah. They're all special in some way. Now, I know that there must be a piece in here that stands out. Is there something that you'd be willing to share with us tonight? A little taste of something?
Well, maybe the story that was chosen from the Danbury Library.
Okay.
Excuse me again. Recently they had a literary program at the Danbury Library, and they said to people all around, submit some of your articles. And I thought, well, why not?
Yeah.
And I knew that most of them would be young people and everything, but I thought, well, maybe they'd like something. So I did write this article that was sort of jarring in my, you know, years ago when I was in high school, there was a star, Peggy Lee.
I know Peggy Lee.
You know. And when they chose this article, and I brought a copy, they chose this article. I couldn't get over it because all the other winners of this literary contest, they were like poems and young people, and nobody was as old as me. And I said to one of the judges, "Why did you pick my Peggy Lee article of all articles?" And he said, "Because it was unique." But then, you know, it touched my heart. Let me just tell you a little bit about this. Peggy Lee, well, the genesis of it was, it really bothered me. I went to a concert with Peggy Lee with my boyfriend Bill when I was 15, and he was 17. And I saw Peggy Lee on the stage, beautiful, statuesque, shimmering gown, singing to each man in the audience. Wow. She wasn't singing to me. And I was sitting there, a 15-year-old gawky teenager, and I thought I looked pretty good, but not compared to Peggy Lee. So let me just, if you...
Oh, good. Oh, please do.
I thought maybe you would ask a question.
Ah, see, you were ready.
The concert was heaven to Bill, but to me, awful. I came back feeling ugly, knowing I was a dud compared to Peggy Lee. There on the stage was Peggy Lee, gorgeous Peggy Lee, wearing a different beautiful gown with each new song, gowns that slithered and shimmered down her perfect, mature body. Her white blonde hair piled high, her alabaster smooth face with those deep blue eyes singing in her special, thoughtful, effortless style. And again, I won't read the whole thing, but it was to Bill, my date. But when I think back on those teenage years and how vulnerable and insecure I was, I didn't give myself credit for what I was. And I have to stop and think about young people today. I didn't appreciate my youth and good health, my energy. All I realized that Bill's eyes were only for lovely Peggy Lee. But now here comes, why do I write about my long ago self-centered, immature stage? As I read about Peggy Lee, who I disliked because she showed me up, I was a foolish teenager. She lived a long life. She was 81 when she died, but she suffered from diabetes. Her beauty and talents didn't give her happiness. She had 4 marriages, a great deal of personal and physical suffering. And when I reflect, I realize Peggy Lee, only 6 years older than I, would probably give all of her talents, wealth, and fame for the happy, healthy years that I had and the relatively good health and dear friends that I knew. When she sang, "Is That All There Is?" I wonder if she was thinking how barren her life was. Even as she sang with its glitter and fame, all I could see was the present.
Beautiful.
But now I realize.
Beautiful. When we do not share our past with the children of today, we're stealing a little bit of their tomorrow.
Right, you're right.
It's so important for them to know that 15-year-old girl in there is still with us. Those 15-year-old girls, they don't change.
That's true.
Peggy Lee may not be on that stage, but they're still in that audience, and it's the same heart. The same things happen. The emotions that you share in that book are emotions that people share every day. Now, one of the things about your book that I absolutely love is the fact that they celebrate little-known heroes.
Yes.
They celebrate the so-called normal people of today, but normal people are heroes too.
It's true. Actually, that's one of the ways I really got started, Vin. I wanted to find out originally, before I wrote the book or the stories, why so many older people do not share. And yet some people are so good, and some are not. Excuse me. So my first stories were really biographies of seniors, unappreciated seniors. And that's how I got really into writing.
Yeah, you know, it's sad because sometimes seniors don't realize. I had an amazing father-in-law. My father-in-law was my best friend. And he was just an incredible man, full of energy and full of life and full of stories. He had wonderful stories in his past. And it used to break my heart sometimes when people didn't listen. He'd be in the middle of the story and they'd be turned off in another direction, and I could see it in his face. This was his life, and his life was so exciting in so many ways. And I hate to think that all of those wonderful memories left with him.
Right. Well, I think that's I got to thinking about, that's why I did put the musings together. I enjoy writing them. I get a big kick out of sharing what I've gone through.
And people are, I'm telling you, they're gathering to hear you. I can't turn to the paper without seeing your name somewhere. You are all over the place. You're the Peggy Lee of today.
No.
But you, I mean, people are coming to hear you because you have something very important to say, and it's an important message.
Well, thank you, Vin. And coming from someone like you, who is an experienced writer, it really, really means a great deal to me. Because, you know, as you write these things, they were just parts of my life. But when people like you appreciate it, it's so encouraging. I want to go on.
Oh, glad to hear that. Now, so I'm sure this is not the end. I'm sure that there's a lot more of Dorothy Killackey coming. Do we have more stories?
They're published every other week. Wonderful. In the Putnam Press and Putnam Times. So every other week people can still keep reading.
So your column is still live and well?
It sure is. I have, I followed up on my first date. A new one was, he came back.
Oh.
And then then I wrote one about I'm not doing the rumba. And that has to do with some guy I went out with when I was 15. And that one hasn't been published yet, but it will be. And there are a couple of Christmas stories I have in mind. Maybe I'll get them in yet.
Yeah, no, you mentioned Christmas a couple times. You know, some of these stars all of a sudden in their careers decide, you know what, I'm going to do a Christmas album.
Yeah.
And at first I say, not another Christmas album. Then I realize what they're doing is they're kind of touching something that's important to them.
Yeah.
Christmas is more than Christmas. It's a tradition. It's a time. I mean, I have so many wonderful memories of Christmas, and I'm sure you do too. And your work would inspire other people to remember and to feel some of those good times.
I hope so, Vin. I hope that children, this is one thing I hope, that some of the young people that read this, maybe, even if it inspires one person, just one even, it's worth everything. Because that's what I really want. Because if you write about yourself, first of all, it makes your life happy.
Yep.
But it brings in other people.
Here's a question. When and where do you write? I mean, do you write at the kitchen table? Do you write, do you have a little office? Do you write in the library? Where does Dorothy Killackey come up with all of her wonderful musings?
Actually, about 4 o'clock in the morning when I wake up.
Me too.
You too?
Middle of the night. Nobody's going to call. The only one that bothers me is the cat. And the cat will bother me any time of the day.
And and then I think about it until I get up, and then I go into my computer. That was the whole thing. When I used to do the typewriter, but I'll tell you, the computer's wonderful because you can type as you think, and you can go back, and you can change. Every old person better get into the computer.
I'm telling you, that change, I mean, I started my first book, Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye.
Yeah.
all done by hand.
Yeah.
I have carpal tunnel today because of that book. But I have a box just filled with handwritten manuscripts.
Oh,
when the typewriter, remember the Selectric typewriter? It had a ball on it with different fonts. I was like, oh my God, a typewriter that can do 3 different fonts. I mean, today you can do 300 fonts.
When I found that I couldn't get any more ribbons for my typewriter, I went to an adult class with 50 other young people, and I learned the computer. That's the answer.
So here's the big question. Now that you're into the computer, you're still writing.
Yeah.
You're going to put another book together? Yeah or no?
I have 17 stories.
Okay.
These are 54 in this.
Yeah, wow.
So I don't know if I'll get another 54. I don't know.
Now, this is available on Amazon?
Amazon.com or Kindle.
Excellent, excellent.
So
we can get them, and hopefully they're in all the local libraries at least.
They should be.
They
yes,
should be.
I think
Hear
so.
that, librarians? We need Musings in the local libraries, and we need to make sure it's accessible for everyone in Putnam County.
Thank you, Ben.
My pleasure. It has been absolutely my pleasure to have you here. I think what you're doing is a good thing. And I would just wish that the people in Putnam County could understand that Dorothy has been writing for a long time. She writes from her heart, and she's writing for you. She's talking to you. And it's very important that you understand that this is something that you should be reading. Musings by Dorothy Killackey. Available in the libraries, available on Amazon, available on Kindle, and available in all our hearts once we read it.
Thank you,
Dorothy,
Ben.
what a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much.
When you write your next book, when 17 becomes 50 again, I want you back here. I want to talk to you again. In the meantime, please stay tuned. Watch this show. Let us know what you think, because we are interested in you. Next time we talk writing, come and join us.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.